Hello and welcome back to day 2 of the Alpha DevCon for 2022. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I am very pleased to bring to you Dan Bricklin, our CTO, going over today's first session of the day, Alpha TransForm Feature Review. We've added quite a few things to TransForm since last year, and I think that you are going to be impressed. So let's get started. Hello, Dan, are you there? Looks like you may be on mute.
There I go. No, I had to hit the unmute. Do I have the
Okay.
right microphone?
Good morning, Dan. How you
Good
doing?
morning. Doing okay. Let's see.
Awesome.
Do my camera here.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make you a presenter.
Okay.
So we'll have all kinds of things that we can show on the screen.
The presenter. Okay, so when I want to show screen, I just push my button here, right?
Yep.
And let me
show camera. There's a camera button.
Yeah, let me see what it looks like. Show camera, show stop show. Camera. There we go.
Hey, there you are.
There I am.
At your standing desk. I always like the
than-
standing desk because it always feels like you're way up there. Like,
Yeah, well, right now it's better for my back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I'll be
Stretch
looking
out.
up here.
Nice.
Okay, and let's see. Anything else I need? Yes, I need my presentation.
Yeah. Always something.
Where is that? PowerPoint. Let's make that. That's a nice size. And we'll make that full size. And I'll share my screen. Show screen. I have to show the right screen.
Or the left. Yeah.
See, that's that one. No, I want this one. There we go. How's that?
There it is, TransForm New Feature Review. I see your PowerPoint. I'm going to drop off camera. I ask that you do the same so that we can record basically your PowerPoint in full resolution.
Okay, so hi everybody. Want to at least look you straight in the eye and all that.
Exactly right. You know, you combed your hair and everything.
You all right in front of me, but that's here we go. Does that do it?
Great. That does it. Take it away, Dan.
Okay. So the new feature review. So basically what we're doing is saying what's happened to TransForm since last year, and what can we see about it. There we go. At last year's DevCon, we announced some new stuff. We announced the dashboard for doing analytics. We announced internal changes that we switched to the WK web view in iOS. And we talked about moving towards a browser-based form filler. There had been work towards that, and we're looking forward to shipping the browser-based form filler, an integrated workflow system, and enhancements to TPL functionality. That's what I said last year. Well, what actually happened? Well, we got filler enhancements, and I'll show you some of those that are visible to you. The browser-based form filler is available. We call it the web filler, or the browser-based form, the browser form filler. There have been enhancements to dashboard analytics, and a lot of time went to robustness improvements to many parts of the system. And we'll get into that a bit. And there have been enhancements to workflow, but in terms of getting you some new workflow, major change to what you're able to do in workflow, we have not shipped any of that, but a lot of the design and even implementation of that has gone on. But unfortunately, I can't show you much of that. But just be aware that we have done it, and it's been helpful in doing things like the robustness improvements. So in terms of what we've done to the web, to the filler, both the the web filler and the mobile filler is that we've added support for external authentication for login. In other words, it now handles the ability to say some sort of an account specifier followed by a username to say this user is to be authenticated with some other authentication method other than using the TransForm user authentication system. This lets us be able to, for example, use a particular corporate authentication system and all. And we're not going to say too much about that. If you're interested in that, please contact us, and maybe Selwyn will say a little bit more later about that. We've added a new dollar environment TPL variable to let you know that you're running on a browser, let you know what the URL of the browser is, and or whether you're running on a native mobile. And there's a reason for this, because sometimes you want to do things a little differently in those environments. They work a little differently. The plugins in PhoneGap are different than the way certain things are implemented in the web browser, the web filler. And we've added a new menu item so you can refresh forms even if you have modified forms. The way it had been previously is that if you had any forms that were modified, you couldn't do a refresh to see if there's anything that's been any new forms that have been dispatched to you. This menu item now lets you be able to just see if there's been anything new that comes in without having to upload the changes that you've made or the new forms that you've worked on. This came from requests from users who needed it. In fact, a lot of what we did, bug fixes, security improvements, all sorts of things came from requests from users. Because as we've heard, people are really using TransForm. TransForm is being used and being used 24/7 around the world, and people depend on it. So, but of course, they run into issues that affect their particular use of it. Some of them are issues that are specific to them, and some of them are issues that are something that everybody else could be helped by, and we work on that. So the browser-based form filler, the web filler, it's available now. You have to have the browser user as a role for the users that use it. Otherwise, you won't be allowed to use it, to bring it up. This is to give you the ability to say, I want people to work on a mobile device, or I want them to be able to work also on the browser. Right now, it has this particular URL, and you can use that to get to it. Its functionality is very similar to the mobile form filler. It uses the same data, the same form definitions, and it looks pretty much the same on the screen. Some changes from what I previewed last year is that it doesn't take up the whole screen if you don't, if your screen is really wide, and it's you can set the size. It takes advantage of the layout capabilities of TransForm to be able to lay out things appropriately on the screen when you're looking at a form. It's keyboard and mouse centric, and it takes advantage of modern browser features like the camera and screen capture, and it uses IndexedDB for persistence, which means that it can persist an awful lot of data, and that was something we was not at the time that I was showing it last year. And this can be a key part to many uses of workflow. Now, the web filler is still the same type of filler, works the same way with the same model that we have with TransForm. is that a user may only be logged into one form filler instance at a time. This is up to the user to do that. Because since you can be offline and all that, we don't know if you're still logged in or whatever. So you can't have two simultaneous, one on the mobile and one on the web, or multiple web, editing the same form at the same time. Only one, you can only have one person logged in on one device, modifying something at a given time before you send it back to the saving it back to the TransForm servers. It requires logged in online connection for certain operations. The map, when showing a map, that the little thumbnail from when you set your location, that requires connecting online. Obviously, we use facilities of our servers and of Google servers for that. When you take a photo, they're immediately uploaded to S3, to Amazon S3. So when after you take a photo, you need to be connected, you need to be online and logged in. And of course, if you're doing AJAX requests, you also need to be connected, and in many cases logged in, to be able to do that with a non-expired logged in. Canned images are not, we don't get the canned images from your on-device data, because that's not, you can't do that. What we do is we allow you to be able to have those canned images up in the cloud somewhere, and you have to be connected at the time to be able to see those. But it is possible for you to do that. It doesn't support some operations. It doesn't support SQL through TPL at this point. Scanning, it does not do actual conversion of an image of a QR code or barcode, though you can type in a value if you want manually that you would have gotten out of the scanning operation, and it doesn't do audio recording. But it does do audio playback if you want. The enhancements to dashboard analytics. We've added some metrics to allow you to be able to see what's happening, which of the, when you're doing a query of the server, to say, get me all of the form instances that meet the following criteria, and a search is done on the TransForm server, and some filtering is done there, etc. That there are metrics available to see how that's where the time is going on that, and I'll show you that. A lot of work went into performance. When we initially came out with the dashboard analytics last year, it was designed for downloading data and then doing it all in the browser. Well, when you have large amounts, months and months of or years of forms with lots of fields and stuff like that, and signatures and other things that take up a lot of space, that the performance was starting to degrade for people, because there's just so much to download every time that you would do a refresh of the data from the server. There are various features in or functionality within Alpha Anywhere we were taking advantage of that we needed to tune, and we've been able to make that a lot better, and we've also given you the ability to be able to see what's happening, be able to make some of the changes yourself to be able to improve that, so that your refreshes will be much faster. And in some cases, people were taking so long to query that the timeout occurred, and it was like over a minute, I think. So we've been able to get that down quite a bit. We're now showing when it does a query, it shows progress, and you can see how the query is going along, so you can get an idea of what may be slowing it down, or at least know how it's progressing. We make it possible to handle larger amounts of data through, despite the fact that we're doing the querying of the progress by some extra work that we had to do. That gets down in the weeds of how Alpha handles HTTP requests. We now have the ability. Yes.
Dan, may I interrupt you just for a quick clarification on a
Yeah.
point? So someone just said, look, I'm confused about scanning. We scan barcodes and QR codes all the time. What you're referring to is specifically scanning barcodes in the browser-based filler,
Yes,
not the
just
one that's
in the web
installed
filler. Yes,
on the web.
just in the web filler. At this point, we have not put in a browser-based version of scanning.
However,
If you're
it
on
is
the
possible.
mobile
Yeah.
one, in fact, we've improved the mobile one. The mobile one on Android had some issues with certain types of barcodes that we no longer have the issues with. Those have been fixed. So work has been done on that, but that continues to work well, and it's a major use of TransForm is to do barcode scanning, as was shown yesterday. I think in some
in the presentation with Igloo.
presentation with Igloo, it depends upon it. So does that make that clear?
That answers that question, and then maybe we could touch on the roadmap on Friday.
Yeah, but the
Plans to
roadmap
implement such a
last
thing.
year, in the roadmap last year, when I talked about the web filler coming, I did say that it doesn't handle scanning, and at the time it didn't handle scanning, and at the time it didn't let you type it in, I think. But now that's been at least it lets you, it detects that it's on that and lets you do that. Another thing we added is the ability to do count of matching forms. If you're doing the way that the dashboard works, is that it does SQL queries on the server, takes the result of that on the server, and then does some additional filtering using JavaScript on the server, and then sends back the filtered results. Well, if you happen to have a large number of forms with lots of data in it, it can be that's a lot of data to send back when all you may want is the count of how many. And a count is very quick in SQL, and we've added the ability to just say, tell me how many forms meet this particular criteria. I want to know the count of that. And then I will use that on my dashboard. And that lets us do much quicker queries for certain things where all you want to know is how many forms meet certain criteria. And now the thing about that is that it requires you doing things that can only be done in SQL. So because it's the SQL query to do that count, and therefore you need to only do the filtering operations that are done through SQL, not those that were done in JavaScript afterwards. And we now let you see which operations do that, and so you can be able to tune for that. And the let's see, the one, since we know that there's lots of things people want to be able to do in order to be able to analyze their data, and sometimes let's say you have forms that have signatures in them. Signatures are can get very large, and if you have lots and lots of signatures on lots and lots of forms, that's a lot of data to bring down. and you may want to remove that. Or you may want to do some other type of processing pre and post the filtering that's done on form data in the dashboard analytics. I'll show you this for those that don't fully remember how the dashboard analytics work. But basically, we allow you to write TPL code that is run on the results of the SQL query, and done before we then do filtering using the filtering that you can specify using a dialog box to set up, and then you can post-process that so that there's an awful lot of work that can be done on the server before you send the data back to TransForm. And that gives you a lot of power to be able to do certain things. In addition, there are server values, $-.server values, which is a TPL value that's now available to the server, so that you can actually have, and this includes user inputs. This means that you can have switches on the or buttons and other things on the other controls on the dashboard, that when you click, when you do a refresh of the data from the server, those inputs are used to pre or post or filter the form data to be able to give you even more capabilities. And people have been using this. It's allowed us to be able to do much more sophisticated data analysis and be able to handle larger amounts of data. The on submit actions, there's some enhancements to that. The most visible one is that we now have connected applications. For those that have seen Selwyn's presentation yesterday, we have the ability to save data in storage, and now TransForm does that you can, as an on submit action, you can say, take the results of this this form, the form upload, and save it to Amazon S3, to your Amazon S3, to your Dropbox, your Google Drive, and well, Selwyn, I think, will show that later on. So an awful lot of time this year has gone to robustness improvements to many parts of the system. With the use, lots of people using TransForm in lots of different ways, and other things, we've been able to get much more input on how people are using TransForm and how it operates. And there are various areas where we wanted to improve the ability to have for security, so that your data is kept as private as possible, robustness to be able to handle situations where the connectivity isn't as good, where there are large amounts of data, where there are all sorts of other things that required changes to Alpha Anywhere. The input from this that ended up in fixing various issues. A lot of that ended up in Alpha Anywhere to help everybody's use of Alpha Anywhere. And as we fix some of the stuff, I was doing things like having to drive to areas where I knew there was poor but not too bad connectivity in the cell phone, to be able to test different upload scenarios and failures of various sorts when there's poor connectivity but still some connectivity. You know, repeatedly testing some of those things to be able to make sure that our error messages, our handling of various situations, and all are as appropriate as possible. And it's been a lot of work, but it's really improved the system in many ways. And so that's where a lot of time went over the last year. It's hard to be able to schedule for that, because a lot of this is in response to actual situations that customers run into, and we try to be as responsive as possible. I mean, we've had things where we'll get report, on Friday morning, and by Saturday afternoon we have, Saturday evening we have fixes, put up and figure out for things that were very obscure. But we try to be as responsive as we can to the needs of our users, because we know how much people are depending upon this. We have done some enhancements to workflow, and as I said, and Selwyn will show a little bit, but there were internal things, internal features put into the system to be able to support a much more complex and robust workflow system. And we've been working on that to be able to make sure that we can handle it. These are the on submit actions, but also we want to be able to have more complex workflow. The workflow diagram will be more complex than the one now, which is just next with filtering. So things have been put into the system. Design has been made to how that's going to work, and a lot of the mechanism for it has been put into the system, but we have not put that out. This includes the ability to find where there were various failures during the workflow, such as when a post data is done and the post data detects some error and sends back the fact that there is an error or that it fails, or various steps fail and stuff, to be able to indicate that to the account owner and allow them to do something about it, including retrying and stuff like that. So a lot of that work has been done, but we have not released it yet. We've done a lot of work on what the flowcharts would look like, the workflow flowcharts would look like, and how we can render them with the lines the right way and stuff like that. Lots of work has been done on that, but unfortunately we have nothing to ship in terms of that for you. I'm sorry about that. So let's let's try to do some demos here. Let's see. Let me let's see. Let's get out of here. Oh, we can do this here. So let me show you. This is the web filler, and it has a max size, but it is responsive, and it does, that information is given to the system. So for example, if I go to help and I go here to let's see, multiple screen size support. So this thinks it's extra large. Now it thinks it's large. Now it thinks it's medium. So this, and this can be helpful for a lot of things. Let's see some of the other areas in this. If we go here, this works. You can click on it just like you would expect. It's similar to using it on the mobile filler. But if we go here to photos, let me add a new photo item. When I go to capture an image, it says choose a webcam. So let's right now there's the integrated camera. If I have the integrated camera, here we go. Down there, I can take a photo. And I can use that photo. That's being uploaded to the cloud. And you can see that. I can, let's do another one. And let's capture another image. And let's change it to this. So now I'm using an external camera. This is I just plugged in a webcam and I have it on a stand looking at the floor. And there it's looking at something. This is like you have it on a production line or something. And I can take a photo from there. I can crop it. Let's crop a little more. And then I can use this photo. Here you go. It uses the size. You can, when you have photos, you can tell it what resolution and stuff like that, just like normal, like before. And let's put this up and let's do one more. We'll capture an image. This time, let's do a screenshot. And now we'll do the other screen. So now you see the other screen. And so that's what it looks like. Choose the webcam. I'll take a picture of it. Now let's see, let's change, let's move. See, I have this over here. I can move it around. Let's take a photo. We can crop it and use the photo. This is at full resolution, but now what I can do is I can go in here and just like you can mark it up and we'll save that. Now, why do the screen capture? When you're on a desktop, a lot of the work that you're doing may be on the desktop, and what you're getting may come in the way that you can see it on another window, and you may want to do a screen capture to be able to put it in to show what you're doing. Markup and cropping is real important in this situation because you may not be able to move some of the stuff like you can in a mobile device. So we give you all these nice capabilities, and it actually makes the let's do one more. Makes the web filler actually have some advantages over what you can do with the mobile filler. One other thing I can do is choose from an album. And here we go. We'll get this side of a car. So this is an image that I took out off of the file system. And of course, there's the scratch in my poor car. And we can change the color. Let's go to the color here. Yeah, done. Anywhere else up? Little thing there. Okay. So this gives you some abilities that we didn't have to the same extent because your laptop or your desktop may have all sorts of extra abilities in terms of communication and stuff like that, and getting its data. So that's that one. We still have, let's go back out of here. We still have the ability, to do signatures. Those, we handle those. Recording is not unable to do recording at this point, but as I said, playback is available in terms of that. And that's it for this one. Let me show you canned images. Let's get into canned images. So I'm gonna, here I have a canned image of a body. This is something that is in the on-device data. But what I've done here is I have in the on-device data, there's this thing called cloud path. What cloud path is, it says that in the cloud, use this as the when I have # transform to whatever for various prefixes for things, which is used for and it's used in the canned images. Use this as the beginning instead and pick it up, so that if I want to create an image of the body, push that button and it picks this up off of, in my case, it was S3. Here's a list, and I can choose a particular list. Let's get a car, and there's a picture of a car that it got from it, from the canned images. So that's the use of canned images. Now, one of the things about running in a browser is that it's possible for users to be able to get to developer tools, you know, where you suddenly can do things like this or whatever. And and that means that you might be able to get access to see TPL and other values that are there. And if you're doing AJAX requests, you may have certain keys in the data, and you don't want that visible to the user. So what we have is the ability to do the AJAX send rest request to server. This is a facility that's in TPL. There's documentation about it. Get into that in a second. And what you can specify is, I have a particular template that I want to use. In this case, it's request test. And I have an argument, first argument, second argument, third argument. These are arguments that I'm sending. This one has special characters in it and alphanumerics, this same thing. This has also has an apostrophe and a new line and a / character. And so if we look here at the other account settings, we see that there's a thing called send request. It's in the other account settings. And there is a, you can click on this to learn the format of this. But basically you're saying, here are the templates. There's one called request test. It's going to be get, well, actually, because it has a body, it's going to become a post. Timeout, what's the URL? What's the query string that goes on the up in the URL, and what are the headers? You can have headers, and you can have the body, and the body, you want to be able to have the body have different pieces to it. So this has, you can have just text, which is then followed by what's called a constant, where I'm picking up the value from called constant 1. I'll tell you why we need that in a second. And there's arg1, and it comes from the arguments that were passed in, as you just you saw there. I'll show you the call, and I'll take argument number 1, argument number 2, but make sure that you filter it to only show the alphanumeric characters. I don't want them to be able to put in non-alphanumeric characters like period or something like that. I want to be able to keep from being certain type of injections that we don't want. And this one lets you do the alpha anywhere JS escape function on that argument, which translates apostrophes and backslashes and stuff to make it easier to be able to create JSON or JavaScript values. Here's the constants, and there's a constant one is called is constant one. And if I run this, send this to the server, I got back the following. I got back the HTTP method was post. The query was this key, which we saw, and the content type is this. The headers are host, user agent, including the one that I added. And the body is, and this is the body with constant. Remember what we, and it says constant one is the constant. And arg1 was first argument with special characters. arg2, it removed all of the special characters. It has just alphanumerics. And this one leaves them in, but apostrophe as a backslash, new line became has a backslash n, and a backslash by itself becomes backslash. If we look at this, you'll see this is what it is with the new line. This is a text area. And so that's and let's look at the code. We can look at the code for that. Let's see, let's go to designer. Let's go to web. Let's see, edit custom code and do send request. So what we do here is we're doing the, we start with an array for the arguments. We go through the arguments for the number of arguments that there are, because this is a data group. We add those to the arguments. We do a send request with the template name and the arguments, and then we take the response and put that response where you can see it and give you some information about it. So it's very similar to, if we look at the function list, Ajax. We have send request, has always been there, and now we have send request from server, which is similar and is explained here. And as I said, there is documentation, pretty good documentation that explains it, even more so with some examples that you can try.
So Dan, why,
yeah.
if I could just ask this, why would you do a send request from the server as opposed to just always say doing it from the client if you're running TPL anyway?
Oh, because you don't want the actual request itself, the format of the request, which probably has API keys and things like that in it.
Sure.
You don't want that on the client at all.
Gotcha. Because you don't want them poking around into the source if they're on, especially on the browser-based filler, and seeing your API key and things like that.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Security issue.
That's the thing, and that's why you have that. And back to here. We're still working on these. The in-app browser, it sort of has, it's got some issues, but the big thing here is an on-device data. If we go back here and you look at this, oops, let's get out of here and go into here. There we go. here I have an HTML where I just have an image with the source is transform2 dot flatcar1.jpg. This is picking it up off of the on-device data, which is now using the cloud path to get this off of S3 and putting it in place. So I'm able to use an asset that I keep up on the internet to be able to use that asset and control it and show it here the same way that I used it for canned images. You have access to that, and that's showing you that. Finally, if we go here, if I tap to scan, it says, hey, unable to scan from the browser, enter a value. So, and now you've got your value as if it was, as if that was there.
And again, we're
So,
looking at creating, finding some JavaScript libraries that will allow us to even add that capability into the
oh yeah, we
browser-based
have
filler as
lots of
well.
stuff. I mean, for the future, but
Yeah.
you know,
But
uh,
that's Friday's session. I don't mean
we'll
to
try
jump
to talk about that on Friday. I mean, I have to something that,
in.
yeah, on Friday. It's um, a lot of where we're going with Transform is driven by the needs of users, and so it's sometimes hard to give a complete roadmap because there are so many cool things and so many things we didn't think of that are important with real use. And one of the things about Alpha is we're very responsive to our users, and that's so it. But we definitely have that on a roadmap of something we want to do, as well as the ability to be able to look up in a database. We really do want to be able to have access to various type of databases. The fact that the web filler uses IndexedDB means that we do have some capabilities of handling large amounts of data on the browser and directly inside of the browser. So we can do some of that, which would be faster in some cases, in many cases, than going back to the server. But then you have to download it, in which case using the server may be better. So we're working on how we're going to be handling that. So we'll talk about that. So that's it for the web browser, the web filler. Unless I don't know. Let's see. Let me look here at some of the other things. Username prefixes we handle. You saw that. The handling of some other barcode types on the that. There were bug fixes and upload one had issues, and we put that. We talked about that. And dashboard. Let's show you dashboard. I'm looking at my list of a lot of changes that have occurred this year.
Mhm.
And there were some issues with claim forms that have been fixed and some stuff like that. And we have this thing called a system message, and where sometimes a message will pop up where we can communicate. There's a separate system message that we can send for the web filler than the one for the mobile filler, because mobile filler, we sometimes want to tell you, hey, get the latest, restart to get the latest instant update. We don't have to say that here. We would have to say, just refresh your browser. And this is that refresh forms is new, that I can do a refresh without uploading these. Okay. If I do refresh forms, retrieving form instances.
So my understanding was the user case for that feature is you have someone out in the field, they have a connection, but it's not a great one.
Yeah.
And they've just recorded a whole bunch of data. They've taken a whole bunch of pictures. And if they say, okay, I want to synchronize now, they know it's going to be all day to get that data up. They'd prefer to wait till they get back to a place where they've got Wi-Fi.
Right.
In the meantime, they're still interested to see, hey, have more tickets been assigned to me? And if so, I want
Mm-hmm.
to download them.
Mm-hmm.
So with
Yeah.
this feature, you can do that. You can grab whatever is assigned to you, but without having to go through the whole
Yeah.
resynchronization process.
Yeah.
Did I
So
get that right?
that's yeah. So
Okay.
that's okay. So let me let's see. Why don't I show this? I'll show this here. This is where, yeah. And here I have a dashboard in TransForm Filler, and I hope TransForm dashboard, the dashboard and TransForm up on production. And there's a user input, and there's tells you the number of forms and stuff like that. If we look at this, one thing we get to see here is that there's this little drop down on retrieve forms, and it tells me that 71 SQL rows were found by the SQL filtering, and that's the payload size was this big. It took 0.1 seconds to do the SQL on the server, 0.8 seconds to do all the rest of the stuff that it did in filtering and stuff. And the amount of time it took until we got the data was about 4.6 seconds when we did a refresh. The filtering we have on this is I want form data where first time equals Y. This happens to be the, if you remember in general sample, that's this, okay? That's this one here. So it's basically saying if it has a data field called first time, if it's a Y, then that's what I'm interested in, okay? Oh, there's one other thing I didn't show you about this, is if I try to go somewhere else, it does warn you, leave the site changes you made may not be saved, so that you won't inadvertently leave because of something. So form data equals what? And here is, there's some custom TPL code where basically I'm saying here, go through 10,000 iterations of this for loop, and then return true, which means it's as if it's basically a no op, because it's always true, but it wastes a lot of time. And if I have hundreds in this case of or lots of forms, this is going to take some time. So if I enable it and then do a refresh, well, first of all, you see that it's retrieving it. You see it's taking much longer, and it's telling you, you can see it happening, and you can see them selecting it. And then there you go, and it's got downloaded the data. And this processing, the processing of the form data, took 8 seconds, and this took 10 seconds now instead because of that. So this is two new things. I mean, this is one new thing of being able to, you got this, but you're able to see the progress as it's going along, and you can figure out what was, if I do this again, you see that it's showing you the different phases of the processing to be able to do that. And there's a cancel button right now. I think today there's an issue with that cancel button, but it will be fixed shortly. So let's get this disabled and show you something else. So this is the other thing we added, is first of all, you can get the data rows, or you can just return the count. And the count returns the count as $.servervalues.sql row count, and you can then use that in your tiles to be able to display something. But when you do that, you have to look for things like, this does not say that it's SQL. But if I added, let's say, the status equals open, okay, notice this says that it's SQL. So this is something that you can have if you're going to do a count. If you're doing a count and you have something that's not SQL, then you're not going to be, it's going to ignore that that line. Okay, let's get rid of this. The other thing is optional TPL code to execute after SQL filtering, but before the form data filtering. It gives the current array of the form instance row as $-server values.rows. So in this case, I'm saying that $-server values. I'm making up a new one called pretest, and I'm saying it's how many rows are there, okay? And then optional TPL code to execute after form data filtering, and the current array of the form instance, this is after filtering, is also available at server values.rows. You can do something like push an array on it, which is what this did here. Add the first one to the end, but that's commented out. This says that post test is how many are there post. And then also what I'm doing is I'm saying that server user inputs, I'm making up a new server value, is the server values.user inputs, which will pick up what the user input is. And then I'm just doing a little timer thing here, just takes up some time, and summing up the numbers from 1 to 10,000 and saying the .sum is this. So if I save this, okay, there are 8 forms. User input here, it says server values. Pre-test, there were 71 rows. Post-test, there were 8 rows because I only looked for the ones that had first time is Y. Server input values, user input 1 is Y. Yes, this is a yes. The sum is 5,000, 5,000. And this increment thing is 1. Increment, now if I look at this tile says take the increment value and increment it, add 1 to it, and then show it. What's this saying? What this is showing you is that the every time I make a change here, it increments because this is being redisplayed. It says that I now can have values that survive the redisplay. So they're more persistent values that are available after I've done a refresh. They're reset on a refresh, but after the refresh, it lets you pass values, for example, from one tile to another. It lets you do it. Each tile can have a value that it uses each time that it's displayed, etc. And now if I set this to no, if I do a refresh, you see that it's a no. The server now knows that it's a no, and it could have done something with it. So that's trying to think, are there any other, what other stuff do I want to show with pre and post? We've added the no filler field. We didn't have no filler in the list here. We've added that to the list of fields that you can look at. Mm-hmm. And which was an oversight in the past. And the role is looked at of the person using the dashboard, and various data is not even downloaded from the server if you don't have the right role to be able to see those forms and stuff. So there's more of that. So let's see. There were some bugs, like there was an interesting bug where if you had a range from this time to that time that you were doing to be able to show just certain forms from a particular time, that if you had a date from one date to another date, it worked if you were comparing daytime to daytime, but it didn't work if you had a date because of midnight is different than a date without midnight because of 000. Whatever that bug was, that was fixed, and it was enhanced for that. And I think that's enough for now.
It is. You've come right to the end of our time, actually. Well
Yeah.
done, man.
Oh, I thought.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, yes, it's still. We didn't get to have Selwyn show you the other, but I guess you can imagine what that looks like.
We'll sneak that into maybe the session on Friday when we go through the roadmap.
Yes.
Perfect. Dan, thank you very much for presenting. I
And
really
people have
appreciate it.
questions we have later this afternoon. Is that right?
That's right. In fact, Dan will be in the breakout session for TransForm later on today. Let me take a look at the exact time. That's coming up at 2:45 p.m. Our next session is going to start in half an hour. It's dealing with auditing alpha applications featuring Nikos Kazantzas, showing you the various ways you can use built-in features in Alpha Anywhere to keep track of what's going on in your application and who's using it and what are they doing with it. So Dan, thank you very much. Again, if anyone
Pleasure.
has questions that we couldn't get to, send them off to guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. Until then, we'll see you in about half an hour. Thanks again. Bye-bye.